I'm a 34-year-old guy, married to my wife Emily for about 5 years now. Everything's been great between us, and we've always been pretty involved with my family, especially my younger brother Alex, who's 30. Alex recently got engaged to his fiancée, Lily, and of course, we were excited for them. I always thought Emily got along with my family well enough. Nothing major that stood out, but then something happened that threw me for a loop, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. A few weeks ago, I received a wedding invitation from Alex. I was honestly pumped. I'd been really looking forward to his wedding, celebrating with family, catching up with everyone, and just being there for him. The invitation was beautiful, one of those fancy cards with gold trim, the kind that immediately makes you realize how formal the wedding is going to be. I opened it expecting to see both our names, but nope, it was just for me. That was odd. I double-checked. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a joint invite, just my name, no mention of Emily. At first, I thought maybe it was just a simple mistake, or maybe there was some weird guest list issue. I didn't say anything to Emily right away because I didn't want to freak her out if it was just a mix-up. Instead, I decided to get to the bottom of it quietly. I called my mom, figuring she'd know what was going on. My mom and I are pretty close, so I thought she'd be able to clear it up easily. But when I asked her about it, she seemed off. She hesitated for a second, like she was thinking about how to answer me, then gave me this weird, half-baked explanation about how Alex and Lily were trying to keep the guest list small, and that maybe they didn't have space for plus ones. I didn't like how she said it, though. It was way too casual, like she was trying to brush it off. Honestly, it didn't sit right with me, but at the time, I just let it go. I told myself that maybe I was overthinking it, and I'd deal with it later. I should have trusted my gut, because later turned out to be a whole mess. Eventually, I had to tell Emily about the invitation. I didn't want to hide it from her, and I figured she'd notice something was up when I didn't bring it up. I told her, and she took it pretty hard, honestly way more than I expected. She's always been really family-oriented, and we've gone to every family event together since we got married. So, not being invited to Alex's wedding felt personal to her, like she was being left out deliberately. I could tell she was hurt, even though she tried to play it off like she wasn't. I kept reassuring her that it was probably some kind of mistake, that I'd figure it out, but the more I thought about it, the more uncomfortable I got. I decided to text Alex casually like, "Hey man, just got your invite. Wanted to check about Emily's. Wasn't sure if hers was separate or something." I didn't want to sound confrontational, just in case it really was a mistake, but to my surprise, Alex didn't respond. Which was weird because we talk all the time. A day or two passed with no word from him. I could feel this knot growing in my stomach. I tried not to make a big deal of it in front of Emily, but I knew something was off. The following weekend, we had this family barbecue at my cousin's place. I figured I'd see Alex there, and maybe I could talk to him in person. At the very least, I was hoping someone would bring up the wedding, so I could get a better sense of what was going on. During the barbecue, I overheard my cousin chatting with someone about Alex and Lily's guest list, how strict they were being about who they invited. I wasn't even really paying attention until someone else mentioned that everyone's significant others were invited, except for Emily. That's when I started to feel that gnawing feeling again. It wasn't just some mix-up. They had deliberately left her out. I decided right then that I needed to have a serious conversation with my parents. If they knew what was going on, they were either covering it up or didn't think it was important enough to address. So, I pulled them aside later that day and asked them flat out why Emily wasn't invited. My dad tried to brush it off like it wasn't a big deal, but my mom was avoiding eye contact the whole time. She kept saying things like, "It's just one day, and we don't want any drama before the wedding." That was when I knew something more was going on, and they weren't telling me the full story. Later that night, Emily asked me point-blank what was up with the wedding invite. I didn't have the heart to lie to her, so I told her what I had heard at the barbecue and how Alex still hadn't responded to me. She was upset, obviously, but more than that, she felt singled out, like she had done something to deserve being excluded. Honestly, I didn't have any answers for her. The more I thought about it, the more I started to feel like I was missing something big. Emily wondered if maybe it was because of a disagreement she had with my mom a while back, but that seemed so minor in comparison to what was happening now. None of it made sense. The whole thing was starting to wear on both of us, and I knew I had to confront Alex directly. It wasn't just about the wedding anymore, it was about something bigger, and I needed to know what was really going on before things got even worse. I decided to stop waiting around and reached out to Alex directly. I texted him asking if we could meet up. I told him we needed to talk about the wedding and why Emily wasn't invited. After a few hours of no response, he finally got back to me and agreed to meet later in the week. He said he'd bring Lily along too, which I was fine with. I wanted to hear her side of things anyway. The meeting was set up for a casual restaurant. I told Emily about it beforehand, assuring her that I'd figure out what was going on and fight for her inclusion. She looked worried, but nodded, clearly hoping I could clear things up. She didn't want to go herself, and I didn't push her to. When I got to the restaurant, Alex and Lily were already there, sitting at a table in the corner. The atmosphere felt tense right from the start. Lily was sitting stiffly, her arms crossed, and Alex looked uncomfortable, like he didn't want to be there. There wasn't much small talk. It was clear we all knew why we were meeting. I wasted no time and asked them straight out why Emily wasn't invited to the wedding. I wasn't looking for any excuses or deflections. I wanted an honest answer. Alex shifted in his seat, but it was Lily who spoke first. She came right out with it. She didn't feel comfortable having Emily at the wedding. Her tone was blunt, almost rehearsed, like she had been preparing to say this for a while. Alex stayed quiet, his eyes glued to the table. I was completely taken aback. I had expected some kind of explanation about the guest list or maybe a misunderstanding, but this was something else. I pressed her for more details, and that's when she dropped the bombshell. According to Lily, Emily had made some comments at a family gathering last year, something about their relationship that deeply offended her. Lily claimed that Emily had made snide remarks and implied that she wasn't good enough for Alex. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Emily making those kinds of comments? It didn't sound like her at all. I asked when this supposedly happened, and Lily mentioned a specific family barbecue we had attended. I tried to think back to that day, but I couldn't remember Emily saying anything out of line. If anything, I remembered everyone getting along just fine. Lily, however, was adamant. She said the comments stuck with her and that she didn't want any negative energy at the wedding. She didn't want to risk any drama on her special day. I glanced at Alex, hoping he'd step in, but he still hadn't said a word. That's when it really hit me. Alex was siding with her on this. I asked him directly if he agreed with what Lily was saying. He finally spoke up, but his response wasn't what I wanted to hear. He said that while he didn't entirely agree with Lily's view of things, he needed to support her, especially on their wedding day. He kept emphasizing that it was her day, like that justified excluding my wife. It felt like a punch in the gut. I couldn't believe my own brother was okay with this. It felt like a betrayal. I told them both that I thought they were blowing things out of proportion, that if Emily had said something, it was probably just a misunderstanding. But Lily wasn't having any of it. She said she didn't want to take the risk of any tension at the wedding. Things started getting heated. I was frustrated, and I could feel my voice rising as I accused Lily of holding on to a grudge over something that likely wasn't even that big of a deal. Lily stood her ground, though, and Alex just sat there looking like he wanted to disappear. Then Lily said something that really threw me. She mentioned that some of the other family members agreed with her, which is why nobody was making a big deal about Emily not being invited. I couldn't believe it. I had assumed this was just between her and Emily, but now I was hearing that other people in my family were in on it too. It made me feel like I didn't know my own family anymore. I left the meeting feeling more confused and conflicted than ever. Part of me wanted to defend Emily no matter what, but another part of me started wondering if maybe she had unknowingly offended Lily. I hated that I was even questioning it, but the doubt had been planted. When I got home, I told Emily everything that happened. She was hurt, furious actually. She swore up and down that she had never said anything like what Lily was accusing her of. I believed her, but it didn't make the situation any easier. Now, it wasn't just about the wedding anymore. Emily felt like she was being unfairly targeted by my family, and honestly, I couldn't blame her. Over the next few days, things were awkward with my family. Nobody brought up the wedding again, but the tension was there unspoken. Emily started pulling back even more, avoiding family gatherings, and not wanting to be part of anything involving Alex or Lily. It was starting to affect our marriage too. Emily was frustrated that I hadn't defended her more fiercely, and I was stuck in the middle, unsure of how to move forward. I knew I couldn't keep stalling. The wedding was coming up fast, and I had to decide whether I was going to attend without Emily or stand by her and risk a full-on family rift. It felt like I was being forced to choose between my wife and my family, and I didn't know if there was any way to come out of this without losing something important.